What up, everybody? Welcome to the MarkZDrumcast. I am your host, Mark Zapata. I am the owner and founder of MarkZDrums, and I am your host for today. My co-host, Louie, is somewhere around. It is a beautiful Wednesday here in New York. A lot going on, a lot happening. Listening to some STP as there are some things possibly coming up for me involving that band. I always love kind of getting involved in cover projects and of course working with my student bands because there's so many. Listen, I'm not a spring chicken. I've been listening to music my entire life since I'm a little kid. I remember listening to Pink Floyd Animals on 8-track that got handed down to me from my older siblings on my 8-track player, where the song would be rolling along nicely and then all of a sudden it would fade out and you would hear chicone, and then it would fade back in right in the middle of the song. For those of you unfamiliar, that's the way 8-tracks would roll. I still don't really know the concept of the 8-track. I guess there's 8 tracks? I don't know, but apparently the tape goes from track to track within that big clunky thing that you put into the player. And then it would just sometimes, like, you couldn't really space out the tracks, so however long the song went, if it happened to bleed over through tracks, then you got that big clunky sound, and it faded out and it faded back in, and that's the way it was. Aerosmith Rocks, I think, was another 8-track I had. I also had Presence by Led Zeppelin, where I discovered Achilles' Last Stand, and that became one of my favorite songs. So I just remember listening to music from when I was young. You know, before that, it was the what do they call those? Transistor radio under my pillow at night to go to sleep, listening to WABC and like different radio stations on AM radio. Listen, man, a lot of you have no clue what I'm talking about, but it happened. I promise you it happened. Believe me, it happened. So I remember from a little kid just always loving music, always having a radio on. I remember one time they used to do this top 100 countdown or whatever, and Seasons in the Sun was my and my cousin's favorite song, and she was visiting, and we were hanging out, and we had this one radio station on in every radio we could put on throughout the house. It was in the bedroom, it was in the living room, it was in the other bedroom, it was in, the den or whatever. And we just listened to get to that one song, Seasons in the Sun, because we loved it so much. And, think of it, the top 100 songs. We didn't know where it was going to fall. It was one of the popular songs, so we knew we had to wait a long time through a lot of songs to get to the song we wanted. Now, how about that as a concept for all you youngins out there, right? Having to wait to hear your favorite song on the radio? What? Having to wait to watch your favorite TV show? What? Wait a minute, how about this? Going to the movie theater as a child and seeing a movie that you loved. Let's say, for example, Star Wars, right? Wow, Star Wars as a kid was unbelievable. And then leaving the theater, and you didn't really think about it back then because there were no other options. But you left that theater, and unless your parents brought you back to see that movie again, you were never seeing that shit ever again. And you didn't know that. But you had the memories, right? You had the experience and you loved it. I had a record, a vinyl. It was called The Story of Star Wars. Look it up. I think it had C-3PO and R2-D2 on the cover of the album. But the record was basically the audio from the movie. So it was all dialogue, all music, just as if you were watching the movie without video, without a picture. You were just experiencing the movie without a visual. And I had that, and I played that all the time. And I knew every line, I knew every sound effect, every musical cue in that film. I knew it all because that's all I had to hang on to of the experience, that incredible experience of seeing Star Wars as a child. You guys don't know what it was like back then. It was a simpler time. And but seriously, like if you think about how you can now, you could watch Star Wars every minute of your life for the rest of your life if you wanted to, right? You have that option, you have that ability. Any movie that's ever been made, pretty much you can watch now if you want to, as many times as you want to. You have access to millions upon millions of songs. Music is at the touch of a finger, the touch of a button. Any visual is at the touch of a button. Anything you want is at the touch of a button. I don't even know why I'm going off on this, but to bring it all the way back to the opening of Stone Temple Pilots, when I get to re-experience certain bands that I haven't heard in a while, because there is so much music to consume, and I've always kind of been, I've never been the WBAB type of guy. Now, if you're from Long Island, you know exactly what I'm talking about. WBAB would have a playlist of pretty much 5 rock songs that they would just play endlessly for 40 years straight. Songs like Stairway to Heaven, any Billy Joel song you can think of, put that on the list too. You know, Rockin' Into the Night, whatever it is. You know, all of these classic songs, but it seemed to be like 5 in heavy rotation on that station. And I think some people enjoy that, and that's great. You know, listening to the same songs over and over and over again because that's what you grow up listening to. I'm not that guy. You know, I enjoy the classics. I enjoy songs that I grew up listening to. But because of the fact that I've moved on, you know, and keep continuing to discover new music and moving forward and trying out new things, I probably don't, you know, I don't spend a lot of time with that music. So when I started looking into the Stone Temple Pilots thing, I'm like, wow, you know, they had some great songs. You know, they were a great band. They made great music, and of course, you know, they were kind of a super group. But I saw them at the Dysfunctional Family Picnic that K-Rock threw. Was it the PNC Bank Arts Center? It might have been. But a long time ago. And Stone Temple Pilots blew the doors off pretty much everybody else on the bill. So yeah, just kind of like an acknowledgement that sometimes when you are when you are exposed to music again, sometimes it feels like again for the first time. Sometimes it's like, oh wow, yeah, I forgot how great that was. It's just something I hadn't circled back to in a while. So Stone Temple Pilots definitely great hard rock music. The other thing was Animals. When I mentioned that I had Animals on an 8-track as a kid, I was talking to one of my students, one of my older students, around my age, one of my older students about Animals and how much I love that album. It's probably my favorite Pink Floyd album. And he said, me too. And I went back and I listened to Animals and I'm like, man, this is great stuff. And then a young student of mine who I was talking to yesterday, who's in one of my student bands, was talking about his experience doing some stuff off of Pink Floyd The Wall at a live gig. And how excited he was because he was playing with like adults. He was playing with, you know, seasoned musicians, and this kid is probably about 15 years old. Really super talented keyboard player. and very passionate about music. And my conversation with him yesterday kind of leads me into the topic of today's Drumcast. And I didn't mention the topic ahead of time. Now, I did have this topic. So don't say, oh, you didn't mention the topic ahead of time because you had no clue what you were talking about today. Well, sometimes that's the case. But today, given recent events happening in my life and recent conversations with students and such, what I wanted to talk about today is being a full-time musician and what that means in today's society, and the drawbacks and the positives. There are a lot of things that have changed over the years as far as being a musician and what it means to be a musician and what it means to be a full-time musician. I consider myself a full-time musician because I don't have any other jobs. I don't work a 9 to 5. My 9 to 5 is teaching and playing music. And I'm blessed and grateful to have reached a point where I get paid to play music, and I get paid to teach, and I get paid to work with student bands and share my experience and my knowledge. And I couldn't be happier about that. It is a dream. It's something that I decided to do about 12 years ago when I started MarkZDrums. It's something that I've worked very hard at. I've gone through a lot of ups and downs. I've had a lot of failures along the way, a lot of missteps, a lot of bad decisions, finding my way to where I am now. And now it's at an even newer phase with the Drumcast, my online teaching course, which is in production right now, the book I am working on. So I feel like my second career in life is constantly evolving, and I would definitely call my second career in life full-time musician. So in that, what does it mean to be a full-time musician these days? Now, always the whole thing coming up was that, well, why don't you get a real job, right? Your parents or whoever would say it's something to fall back on. Yeah, maybe, right? It's certainly not unless you get involved or create a hugely popular and successful musical act, or you do some of the things that people do today to gain attention, which is a whole nother discussion. I don't even want to get into that. But I'm talking about somebody who plays an instrument and who is interested in creating meaningful, thoughtful, interesting music. Yeah, being a full-time musician is tough, but I will say it's incredibly rewarding. Just like I talk about when I started teaching, how the first thing I realized was how difficult it was to teach, and then the second thing I realized was how rewarding it was to teach. So, listen, I couldn't be happier. I can't complain for 1 second about what I'm doing with my life. I have this beautiful studio, which is so much fun to be in. If I could spend 24 hours right here, I would. But I'm grateful also to be here to be able to talk to you guys. So let's get into talking about full-time musician. I'm always getting approached or asked if I would be interested in becoming a part of this project, that project, whether it's like, hey, we need a full-time member, or hey, we got some gigs coming up, or we're going on tour, we need somebody to play drums, or we're writing a new record and we need somebody to write drum parts and record with us. It's awesome to be kind kind of sought after in that way, people reaching out and stuff like that. Um, but there's this idea that some people have about how busy you can be as a musician. Well, you're not going to have time to devote to my situation or my project or whatever. If you want to be a full-time musician, it's almost impossible to be involved in just one project unless that project is hugely successful and booked well ahead and constantly working and constantly making money. It's impossible to be involved in one project. And also creatively to be involved in one project. Depending on what the project is, if it is your baby, if it is the way you create and express yourself exclusively, great. But if you're involved in cover music, if you're involved in wedding bands, if you're involved in anything like that, tributes, things like that, where you are performing other people's music, well, there may be a part of yourself creatively that needs more expression. The Drumcast is a perfect example. I teach a lot of students every week and I work with student bands. But I still feel the need to talk about ideas and concepts that I have, express myself, share my experience, share my knowledge beyond that. So for me, the reason why I'm even doing this is for that reason, because I have more to give, I have more to share. And I feel like through this, through the Drumcast, I could reach more people. So it's a little unrealistic to expect a full-time musician that makes a living playing music to be involved in only one project. And also the fact that I don't have a 9-to-5 gives me more time to be involved in each one of the projects that I'm involved with and to be able to give enough to each one of those projects because I have the time to devote to it. It's very difficult because I did it for 18 years where you work a full-time job and you're in a band. I was in a band for probably about 12 years. During the time that I had my 18-year construction run with Verizon, with the phone company. And, we were playing multiple times a month, rehearsing twice a week. We had a monthly rehearsal room, which we paid rent for, that we had 24-hour access to. So we were able to rehearse as much as we needed to. When it was time to write an album, we had as much time as we needed to for writing sessions and because we had 4 people in the band, we were able to coordinate those times because we had any hours of the day were available to us to rehearse. So that was an incredible situation. But again, because I worked 9-to-5, I had limited time. I wasn't even thinking about other projects. That was my full-time gig, and we were very busy, and we got a lot done, and we went on tour, and we recorded records. And it was awesome. So when I made the transition to becoming my own boss and becoming an entrepreneur and a full-time musician, that all changed. Well, okay, now I have time to do other projects. If this person needs me to help them write an album, okay, I think I can do that. So there's a situation that has popped up that I would be perfect for. And it's local, which is something I've struggled with over the years, being involved in projects that were hours and hours away. And it would be perfect for me. And it's not a huge commitment. But the concern is I'm involved in too many other projects. All I'm doing right now is I'm recording and writing music with a couple of different projects. Haven't really been playing out much, which is another reason why I'm interested in this other situation, because it's primarily live performance, which is something I feel like I've been missing lately. So we'll see how that goes. But I'm super excited. Either way, whichever way it goes is fine. Again, there are so many people out there that have been reaching out to me, and I'm very grateful for that. But being a full-time musician requires you to be kind of like a chameleon, number one, right? Because you really are limiting yourself if you decide, well, I'm only going to play this type of music. You're kind of letting a lot of opportunities go by being kind of one way, right? So be a chameleon. Be able to play many different types of music, and be able to move between genres if needed. Be a chameleon in the area of know how to learn songs for cover projects, learn how to write music, learn how to write in different styles for original projects. And again, if you get into a wedding band, which is an area where you can make a lot of money, now you're playing a lot of different genres in the same set, a lot of different bands, and a lot of different styles in the same set. And you may be playing a lot of music in an evening, in a week, in a month, depending on how busy your band is. But that's a different type of situation also. What about what do you call it? I call a happy hour band, a band that goes out and just plays the hits or plays decades, something like that. You may be playing a lot of different styles, and you may be playing long sets. So be prepared to be a chameleon. Be prepared to be fluid, like water, right? Be like water. So the other thing too is be as attractive to any potential projects as you can, right? So when I was talking to my young student yesterday, he was kind of talking about being in this in-between spot where people his age are not as dedicated and devoted to music as he is. And he's also not ready or at that age to be working with adult musicians. So he's in that kind of in-between limbo spot. And I said to him, this is the time where you need to learn as much as you possibly can. Be a sponge. Learn all different types of genres. Get as good as you can on your instrument. Also, learn production. Learn recording. Learn videography. Learn editing. Learn all of those things that will make you as attractive as possible when you are ready, when you get a little bit older and you start to hit the scene and you start to seek out projects or build your own projects. Have all of those skills. Now is the time to do it, right? And then, of course, get as much experience as you can. He was super excited to show me when he played with a bunch of adults at some kind of outdoor concert or something. And he said it was incredible. I said, yeah, go after get all the experience you can, but also build up those other skills in those other areas that make you more attractive. As I journey into my MarkZDrums phase, or I don't want to call it a phase, but this part of my career, this evolution, right, in my career, I'm struck by how many hats I have to wear, right? If this is a one-man show, and I think if you go back a while and you see where we started and you see where we are now, you'd be like, yeah, you know what? It's come along. It's moving along at a nice clip. But there's a lot of learning along the way. Video, lighting, editing, sound, computers, routing stuff, connecting this to get to that, to do this, to do that. This weekend, I am hardwiring my entire house with Ethernet because there's certain things I need to do with my switcher. I need to have everything that I have connected online to be able to really access all the potential of my equipment here at MarkZDrums Studios. But again, it's like, wow, learning curve, lots of time reading manuals, reading online manuals, watching tutorials. anything, any way I can learn how to do this. You're faced with a situation. Wait a minute. How do I get this to this? How do I do this to that? How do I make this work with this? Boom. Whether it's YouTube, whether it's the manufacturer's website, whether it's, whatever. Educate yourself, because this is the world we live in. It's a DIY society. Everything is out there for you to do yourself. If you reach a certain amount of success and you start to decide you want to build a team and you want somebody who's going to take care of this, somebody who's going to take care of that, that's amazing, because we all need that. But in the beginnings, in the early stages, we got to learn about this stuff ourselves. So being a full-time musician requires a lot of intensive study, a lot of work, but the rewards are incredible, because listen, I would rather do the work that I'm doing and be gaining the education, the experience, and knowledge that I have been over the last 12 years, and more especially over maybe the last 5 years, with, trying to build my online presence and things like that, than spending that same time sitting at a desk doing work for somebody else that benefits me not one bit. Putting money in somebody else's pocket. But it's like the fulfillment is not there. And I worked for 18 years for somebody else, to raise a family, put food on the table, the roof over their head, the whole 9 yards. And I don't regret that for a minute. It served its purpose and it helped me raise a family. Now, it is more about what is my fulfillment as a musician? Where do I get my fulfillment from? And it's from what I'm doing right now. So yeah, there's no choice. I've often said there is no plan B for me. This is it. This is what I'm doing for the rest of my days. And however successful I am with that is what it is. It will not be from lack of trying, but this is the choice I've made. This is the decision I've made. There is no, I think I'm going to go get a job at wherever. And listen, I am not, please don't take this wrong. I am in no way knocking anybody that works a 9 to 5, that works anywhere. The work that people do, from the biggest jobs, quote unquote, to the smallest jobs, quote unquote, are all super important for our society, right? And serving the needs of those people. But for me, reaching this point in my life, it's about more than that for me. And so take that for what it's worth. Be a full-time musician, yes, go for it. But study, do your homework, gather your information, make the transition slowly if you can. Probably, I would say, do not quit your only source of income because you're going to make it big in music. And I don't even know that for me, no, making it big in music is not my goal. But being able to have a life playing music, yeah, that's certainly an achievable goal. I mean, if it happens, it happens. If I jump onto a project or get something going that starts to catch fire, all right, great, fine. But, the main thing is now that I want to sustain a life in music. And most importantly, passing on my experience and knowledge and working with my students and working with my student bands. I will always do that, whether it's full-time or not. I will always do that. So, yeah, a life in music is like no other. It's the best life in the world. Get out and get it done. Practice hard, play hard, learn as much as you can, study as much as you can. Be like water, be a chameleon. Learn everything around your instrument. And what I mean by that is, don't just learn to play the drums, right? Learn how to shoot video, learn how to light, learn how to edit, learn how to record, learn all of that stuff. Learn how to learn music, learn how to write music. Learn as much as you can. And then get out there and kill it. Because you know what? This world will always need musicians. And when I'm gone, there will be hopefully many, many more to take my place and to carry on music on this planet. And, that's a super important thing. As I've been spending the years teaching, I'm realizing how important it is to be part of a process that builds up and brings up young musicians. So this has been episode whatever of the Mark Z Drumcast. Thank you so much for spending this time with me today. We may possibly see a prime time Friday Drumcast. I'll let you guys know. I'm working on some things, so I may be able to give you a heads up a little bit ahead of time so that you know the Mark Z Drumcast is going to be airing in prime time on Friday. So Mark Z Drums across all platforms, Mark Zapata Drums on YouTube. Go check out my videos. I just did not a tribute, no. I just did a drum cover of Paint the Town Red. Kind of an example of what I was talking about being a chameleon. I am a metal guy, I'm a metal drummer, and I'm gonna have some hardcore stuff coming for you, and some metal stuff coming for you, and some heavy stuff coming for you in the form of drum covers very soon. But Paint the Town Red is an example of kind of me being a chameleon and messing around with different genres of music that kind of pique my interest. Go to my Patreon, Mark Z Drums on Patreon. There are stickers available, and thank you so much for your support, and I will see you guys soon. Thanks again.